Ahoy, Buccaneers and Buccarinas! My name is Captain Yugioh, and welcome back once again to another vid on this channel that I do. And here today, I want to talk about just a tiny little change that they did. Just a tiny little bit, you know, they made like one little change to things. And it's going to affect everything as it always does! But before anything else, don't forget to like the video if you enjoy the content. Don't forget to comment about it down below if you want to talk about it. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. We do Overwatch videos on Tuesdays, Hearthstone videos on Thursdays, and Yugioh videos every Friday. So let's talk about this. There was a recent change in the last patch going to the live server. It's a small change, like I said, super small. But it does significantly impact things, and that is changes to the time bank system. So in competitive mode, usually there's a time bank going on where it's like if you complete the objective in a certain amount of time, if you get through all 3 parts of a map, or if you are able to, like, you know, they kind of depending on like the game mode or something, if you're able to complete your objectives and you have extra time remaining, that goes into your time bank. The only real changes they do to the time bank right now are usually if one team has time left over but it's under a minute, and the other team has, like, you know, more time or something like that. Usually they'll add back enough time on both sides of it such that the team with less time than a minute has exactly a minute, and then the other team just gets a little more time. Well, now they're adding another adjustment to that, where say both teams end up with time left over above 2 minutes. And basically now what it is that whichever team has like less time, you know, whatever's closer to 2 minutes, like the example they give is like, okay, say you have an enemy team, the enemy team has like 4 minutes and 30 seconds left, and your team finishes off with 2 minutes and 50 seconds. Well, going into the next part of it, your team's gonna have 2 minutes, but the enemy team will have 50 less seconds because you lost 50 seconds from your time, so they're gonna lose 50 seconds from their time as well. So they have like 4 minutes and 30 seconds, well now they have 3 minutes and 20 seconds, and you're gonna have like 2 minutes flat. And this changes everything again! I mean, not really, I mean, you know, it's not, maybe not that dramatic, but it is a very important rule change because that means it's basically gonna be a lot faster to go through different matches. Usually, when you have so much time to do all these different things, you end up in these rare situations where it's just like a game that could have taken like 10, 15, 20 minutes is taking like 30, 40 minutes because both sides are just doing so well and you're able to conquer through a point. And even when you don't both like get all the way through and it ends with a win or a loss or a draw or whatever the case may be, it usually just adds on extra time when you're having to fight out 4.5 minutes and then another 2 minutes and 50 seconds at least. So, that's not even getting through like the whole hero select process where you gotta, like, you know, you've still got like the 30 second process of choosing a hero to the minute, you know, 30 seconds to a minute of setup. It gets to be a very long, drawn out process. So having this sort of change where it just, you know, cuts down on the ultimate length of the match is actually pretty good. Like, it's balancing things more in favor of the team with less time because now they don't have to dedicate so much more time to just defending things off. I mean, just thinking about, like that example of, like, 2 minutes and 50 seconds versus 4.5 minutes. 4.5 minutes is a long time. I mean, you've probably been just sitting here wondering, how long exactly is 4.5 minutes? Has the video ended yet? Gee, how long could that be? Wait a minute, it's been 10 minutes? How did that happen? Or maybe it's the opposite, where you're just kind of like, man, this guy has been talking forever, and it really does feel like he doesn't know what he's talking about, so it just kind of ends up lasting for a very long time, and then you just kind of get stuck into this whole monotonous. Point being, time is a bit of a relative sort of thing, but in the case of like something like Overwatch, where lots of action can happen within very short amounts of time, it's something that's like the more time somebody is allowed to have, the more actions that can effectively take place. You think of it this way, it's like when a team fight occurs, it may last anywhere from like 30 seconds to 2 minutes, you know, depending on how long that may be. So let's say a team fight lasts about like a minute or something, and you usually have about 4 minutes to take over like point A, depending on the map or something like that. Let's say it's a hybrid map, for instance, like Numbani. You have about 4 minutes to take over point A. That means you have about 3 to 4 team fights going on throughout all of that. You will not always have an ultimate for these fights, but there's usually like 3 or 4 fights that kind of go on throughout the course of that time frame while you're trying to take over point A. And then you've got let's consider that, maybe you guys go into overtime or something like that, so that's an extra fight on top of that. Well, let's say you take over point A, you get through all of that, your enemy team does their thing, and they go over that. You have 2 minutes and 50 seconds remaining, and they have 4.5 minutes remaining. That's the big problem right there. When they have 4.5 minutes remaining, that's another 3-4 fights if we're assuming a team fight is a minute. Again, that's being very generous in this regard, but the math basically checks out in this. They have another 4, they have basically 4 to 5 fights, 4.5 fights left to compare to your almost 3 fights. You'll get 3 fights for sure because, 2 minutes and then you have the extra 50 seconds, but it's going to be close. Meanwhile, they're going to have like the full, 4.5 fights at the very least. So that basically means they're going to have 5 fights and they're going to only have 3 fights, which means you're down by 2 fights when you think of it that way. So ultimately what that means is that they've got the extra 2 fights advantage over you. That means they have 2 more fights to basically defeat you and basically make up for what you've done. So obviously this doesn't take into account things like, say, you guys take over point A, get through the next couple of points, and then they take over point A, and then they have to fight through the next couple of points. It doesn't take into account a whole lot of different factors involved, because there's a lot of different variables, but for the sake of simplicity, if we're assuming a team fight is about a minute, and you've got like 2 minutes, 50 seconds versus 4.5 minutes, the fights, they have more fight than you. Because they have more time. Times essentially equal fights that are available to you, and the more time you have, the more fights you have available to you to accomplish the same goals. So when it comes to this new rule change with the time banks, where now, you have that 2 minutes and 50 seconds and that 4 minutes and 30 seconds getting reduced down by about 50 seconds because the lower guy, 2 minutes, to the higher guy, which now only has like 3 minutes 40 seconds, that does basically help this other guy. Because remember, even though they only get 2 fights, these guys now only get like 3-4 fights, more or less. They just lost at least, 1 fight going into this. You lose a fight, but they kind of lose a fight, and that means it's like the game picks up faster. And that 1 fight can make all the difference. That's the thing about this. That's the thing about this game, is that fights really do make a difference in this game. So having less time and having less fights means that you may be at an advantage in that way. Now, you may be looking at it like, oh, well, gee, I only have like 2 minutes, which means I only have like 2 fights or something like that. I only have a couple of chances to really do anything about all that, But keep in mind, they also only have 1 less fight, which means that's 1 less fight you have to go through. That's 1 less fight you have to push through. And that can obviously, that can propel the mindset into just being like, I can do this, I can at least push this out into a draw, or we can hold them off here. Like, let's say in your 2 fights, you not only take over point A, but you get through to point B and point C. Or heck, you just push it as far as you can. They have to go through, 3-4 fights in order to make the same ground as you, and that means with 1 less fight, they may not get there. Even though you got there in 2 fights because you played better, basically, they may not be able to do the same thing. They may not be able to duplicate it because you prepare for them, you counterpick them, you dismantle the strategy, dismantle the team, destroy everything they love and hold dear in their lives. So you get the idea. That's pretty much the gist of it. Obviously, the time bank thing is a very big, crucial part of this game and specific game modes with regards to assault, hybrid, payload. It's a big deal. And it's a very important thing to keep in mind when these time bank changes happen because, well, I mean, if they don't happen, if you keep an eye on them and you realize that they're happening, that allows you to understand better how you can fight when in these particular situations. So it's a nice little change. The other little time change that they did was actually decrease the amount of starting time when you're on the hero select screen from I guess it was at 35 seconds, now it's at 30 seconds. That's totally fine. That upped the pace of the game a little bit, and I think that makes it a lot more of an in and out sort of thing. And that's what they want to do. They want to make the pace of the game faster. So they're increasing the pace of the, you've got the end game that's already fast. Now you've got like the actual time bank that's fast. And now you got the hero select screen that's fast. So Overwatch is looking to be a much faster experience basically. So that's pretty good. This guy's a little snappy, you know what I'm saying? So that'll be interesting to see how this all pans out. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, bell it, boom it, boom it. I'll see you next time, alright? Watch out. This is what I do now. This is my thing. It's being weird like this. Ooh.